World News America. A mile below the surface in the Gulf of Mexico, robots tonight are lowering an 18-foot tall metal cap onto BP's ruptured oil well. It is the most promising sign yet that this spill can be stopped, and scientists say they have made significant progress. The cap will be fully in place by Wednesday, along with a new, bigger storage ship to hoover up the remainder of the leaking crude. That's at least the plan. With the latest details, here's our science correspondent, David Shukman.
This strange new device is what BP's hopes are now resting on. A system of valves to stem the leak of oil. A mile deep, the robots have been preparing to install it. Delicate work, but a task that could mark a turning point in this crisis.
Containment cap on the well, and then we're going to slowly start closing the valves associated with the oil that's coming out of it. And we're going to do what's called a well integrity test. And that will actually tell us whether or not we can actually close all the valves and withstand the pressure that's inside that.
BP's operation to stem the leak has struggled for nearly 3 months. Its most recent attempt involved a so-called top cap to trap some of the oil, but a lot has been leaking out. So over the weekend, they removed the device. This meant increasing the leak, but it is part of a plan to install a better system. A new cap with a much tighter fit is being attached, and it's designed to provide a total seal. A series of pipes running up to the surface could in theory carry away all the leaking oil. And it's possible the valves could be shut off to stop the leak completely, but that won't be a lasting solution. For that, BP is still drilling far below the seabed. 2 relief wells are now getting very close to intercepting the leaking well. The deepest only have to be drilled for another 100 feet, and then they'll be able to break into the leaking well and seal it with cement for good. This progress and talk of BP selling valuable assets has helped the company. Its share price in London jumped more than 9% today. But as a reminder of what's still at stake, a huge fire burns part of the slick. A lot of oil has leaked out in the past 12 weeks.
They're not telling us. BP's blocking LSU from doing any kind of research.
And on the Gulf Coast, there's anger. This woman interrupted the opening in New Orleans of a national commission investigating the spill. She believes the dispersant chemicals are dangerous. Another protester was guided out. BP is getting closer to shutting off the leak, but its troubles aren't over. David Shukman, BBC News.
The President has established this bipartisan...
Well, the BBC's Laura Trevelyan has been at today's commission hearings in New Orleans, and she joins me now from there. Laura, thanks very much for joining me. The government, of course, the administration has been rebuffed in its attempts to have this moratorium on offshore drilling. It's now come up with new guidelines. How are they going down at this commission?
Well, they went down very badly with those people who were giving evidence in the public section of the commission just late tonight. There was one mother whose husband has been put out of work because of this drilling moratorium, Sherry Feuchtlin, who spoke very eloquently about the impact of the loss of income on her family, about how tough it was for them to get along now. So there she was, really showing the very human impact of this moratorium. But also there were offshore drilling executives there as well, who were very angry about what's happened. They were talking about how these deep water rigs are now leaving. They're going to Egypt, they're going to the west of Africa, they're going to Brazil, and the executives were saying that they weren't going to come back in a hurry, and that this high-wage, high-tech industry was being driven out of town. And one executive even drew a parallel with the car industry. He said they got bailed out and we are being driven out.
Exactly the story I heard when I was down in the Gulf as well, Laura. There's also been, of course, a lot on the technical side with this cap being lowered into place. What's the latest on that tonight?
Well, the latest is that the US Coast Guard is saying that significant progress has been made on the lowering of that cap onto that gushing well, and that BP are going to carry out what's called an integrity test of the cap on Tuesday morning. They're going to work out whether or not it actually is stopping the oil from coming out. What they're concerned about is that if the pressure is low, that means the oil could still be leaking out of the casing below. But it does look as though after 3 months and numerous attempts, as David was saying there in his report, that some progress is finally finally being made, although no one is quite daring to hope at this point, and there's still a lot of concern about these crystals that could be forming around the cap in the freezing temperatures a mile below the ocean, which could potentially frustrate the attempt to fit it.
And Laura, when I was down there, the one thing that people said to me is that we can't make any real long-term environmental or economic assessment until the oil stops flowing. It looks like we might be at that point now.
That's right. I mean, it's almost as though everyone here is living in suspended animation, because only once the spill is stopped will people be able to come to terms and see exactly where the oil has ended up, exactly what the impact is, exactly how much has got through. So it's almost as though if this really is the moment that it could be, when the spill is going to be stopped, then people will be able to see what the real long-term impact will be.
Okay, Laura Trevelyan there in New Orleans. Thanks very much, Laura. All the latest on that story there. An extremist group with